Thank you very much up front for taking the time to learn a bit more about SAFM, or South American Ferro Metals. It's a mouthful, so we use SAFM throughout. I'll also try to avoid the common death by PowerPoint. There are a couple of slides that have a few numbers on them. I'll hit the highlights. We've included them for people who would like the whole presentation later on, and as such, we've got those at the booth or in the materials. Mark, just before I start, we'd also like to thank the gang from the events group that has put this on. From our perspective, and being a sponsor, as Mark pointed out, we've really enjoyed it, and it's been an excellent experience, and I think it's very successful from what I can tell, and we hope to be part of this going forward. I'll take the next couple of minutes and give you an introduction to South American Ferro Metals, or SAFM, and see if I can get you as excited about the company as I am. We'll run through a quick snapshot of the company to get everybody on the same page, talk a teeny bit about Brazil and why we're in Brazil, and that's where our main asset is right now. I'll give you a bit of an overview of the company and the operations, so you have a sense of how big we are and what we're doing and where we're going. Then I'll talk about the year past. It's an important milestone for us this year. In fact, this very month, we've just listed a year ago to this month and had a year of ramp up in production, so that'll be a headliner, and I'll talk about how we've done through the past year. And really what is probably more important than where we've been is where we're going, and we'll talk to that in terms of some future milestones, and I'll leave some summary points at the end just to wrap it up. Again, apologies up front. This is a cliche slide with this sort of death by PowerPoint. Really, the key thing for us is we're about a $60 million company. As you'll see, our current mining license allows us to extract 1.5 million tons. That's the rate we're at now. We will talk a little later on about a growth profile and our planned ramp up on site. I think from that slide, the other key thing to really look at is our resource base is very strong. For a company that is mining at 1.5 million tons a year, we sit with a Brazilian resource at 150 million tons, and we're just in the process now, and we should announce this next month. We will take the majority of that, if not all of it, into a JORC standard for the ASX where we're listed. So really, that gives you the metrics of the company, and we're certainly happy to fill that in. Why Brazil? It's a difficult to stand here and talk about Brazil after His Excellency has spoken. And if you're here earlier this morning, Brazil was covered very, very well amongst the other South American and a few Latin American companies. I'll just touch on some highlights for SAFM and why we love Brazil and why we're here. It is a BRIC country with Russia, India, and China. The Brazil economy is huge. You've seen the numbers, you understand it very, very well, but Brazil will be an emerging economy that will drive the economics of the world, and we can see that by operating the country. It's a great spot to be. Very, very strong economically, growing very quickly, and as pointed out earlier, faster than Australia itself. One of the things that was covered very well is the prospectivity. So for a company our size and a company that's growing, Brazil gives a huge amount of opportunity for projects. There are many out there now, and in total, if you take all of Brazil, something like approximately 30% remains under or unexplored. And as was pointed out, there is not yet a national geological survey, so that's another area where companies from inside and outside the country can get together and lend a hand. One of the other things that we've witnessed and we've enjoyed and appreciated is the laws in Brazil. The mining laws are understood. They're changing, but they're well documented, and you can follow through with them. They're a regime that you can work within and you can be successful within, and hopefully I'll demonstrate that in a moment. And we found the interactions with the government agencies very, very positive to date, something we've enjoyed. And I've worked in a number of countries, as Mark said when he introduced me, and I haven't always found it quite that way. Interestingly enough, the last point is quite interesting. Brazil has recently been ranked number 8 in the world to do business in from a resource perspective. In Brazil, we sit right between Canada and Australia. Canada just a bit better and Australia just a bit below. So it's an interesting spot to be, but certainly a place we like to operate in. So for us, Brazil is a great place to be. We are certainly looking outside of Brazil, but Brazil remains our core right now and really our key focus for growth in the short to medium term. Just quickly to tell you a bit about SAFM and give you a sense of who we are. I think the strength in our team, we have a great asset, obviously, in an ore body that grossly outstrips our current licenses. That's exciting, but grades are very powerful. But really the key thing for us really is in any place is you only have 2 assets in these mining companies. You have the resource itself, which we'll talk about, and you have your people. On the screen, you'll take a look at the management team, not something you'll see in every presentation, but from my perspective, worth a slide. This is really where the strength of SAFM sits right now. The team on the board in front of you has over 105 years of experience, and they're really quite something to watch in operation. So We're set up in Brazil. That's our base. That's where our team sits and our work is. And this team sits up in Belo and manages the country for us. To give you a sense of our Ponto Verde project, which is our flagship project and our core right now, as I mentioned earlier, we are at the 1-year anniversary. It was last November that we listed on the ASX, so in October we finished permitting. November we listed, and then simultaneously the same month we started producing run-of-mine straight ore for sales. Shortly thereafter, in February, we started our plant up, and then after that we started the sales in May. So we've had that sort of logical sequential startup, and you'll see the results of that in a minute. They went through and got operating. The key for us, we started on 1 shift a day to make sure we understood what we were doing, to make sure the safety and the production was correct. We've since ramped that up to our full licensed and nameplate production. Talk a bit about that. Going forward, one of the things that happened in July for us, we produce a small lump and a sinter feed product, but there's still a great deal of iron left in our fines. So in July, the board accepted a recommendation to build a concentrator on site, and in the second quarter next year calendar, we'll see the concentrator come online, which will then step us up again in our outputs. I think I mentioned earlier, but a key milestone for us, especially being listed in Australia but operating in Brazil, is to have a qualifiable or certifiable resource in both countries. So we have the Brazilian resource through Coffee's Mining, and that's been very powerful and listed with that. And in another month's time, we'll be announcing our JORC resource. I won't dwell too long on the drill program for now. Geology really is, we have a hematite-rich idibarite ore, very, very common in the area. It's a free dig ore. It's not something that needs to be drilled or blasted. The pits are relatively manageable and shallow. They get down to about 50 or 60 meters depth. We're digging down to that now. We sit on this map that you see in front of you, loosely put, the lightning streak in the middle that's red is our tenements at 150 hectares. I see on my screen a lime green to the right of that, which is running normally north-south as well, is the adjacent tenement, and it shares our ore body, and that is Vale, who sit next to us. On our side right now, we have a resource that is, we believe, 250 to 300 million tons ultimately, and further if we go to depth. And Vale is sitting across the border on the same deposit, but the other half of it, and they're sitting with an excess of 800 million tons. So the deposit in its total is really quite powerful. Just a sense of what we do in terms of our cash flow and what we produce. I said before, we do a small lump product and we do a sinter feed. You can take a look at the size ranges. There's nothing wildly exciting in that as it sits, but to give you a sense of our grade, I think the excitement for me is on the right-hand side of that slide. You'll notice I refer to the fines. Now that is a forward-looking statement. It'll be in April next year that we have a full month of fines production and our concentrate from that. We currently are stating that, and we're planning on that being a 62% product. Our current lab results are looking materially higher at around 64 to 65% iron. So we're quite keen on seeing what we can do when we complete our process facility. Just want to give you a sense. I've told you a bit about who we are. You've got a very quick snapshot on the year in review. Just want to give you a sense of what the company looks like. Certainly not everyone's been to the Ponto Verde site or Brazil or even Belo Horizonte, which is the closest city, I should say. Just a couple of shots. The top left really just shows our recent drill program that underpinned our JORC resource statement coming out. We completed that about a month and a half ago. It was about 3,500 meters of drilling, very successful. The little sign at the front of the gate, as you do. On the top right-hand side, you can see the pits are starting to establish a regular and a very formatted benching style to us. This is an operation that was started up in the 80s and was sort of mined as a smaller tonnage, opportunistic mine site on and off. The chance to get a handle on this mine site was to go back and look at it, to work through some of the environmental issues and the permitting issues, and to bring it back online and take the ore body and treat it as a world-class ore body as opposed to opportunistically. And you can see in the top right that we're in the process of doing that. We operate at any given time out of 4 separate pits, but we have 6 that are developed and ready to mine from. And that allows us to optimize our blend and our grades and allow us to feed the product to clients or sources as we need to. Couple more quick shots, typical things. You can see some of the product coming off the conveyor ways. Excuse me. Central bottom of the slides is just it's about a month and a half, 2 months old, so it's a little out of date with apologies. But that is the foundation work for the concentrator that is being built now. We've done all the civil work on it, and the steel construction is going ahead off-site on schedule. And as I said, in the second quarter next year, we'll be producing from that. I want to tell you how we have done over the last year. We talked about listing the company. We talked about ramping it up. We are currently working 3 shifts a day. I've got some coaching, if I could, I've got some coaching on this slide. So, well, geez, this is a commercial group, it's a business group, what do they care about safety? And I thought, yeah, that's fair enough, but really, for those of you that have managed companies or run operations, safety is good business. It's the right thing to do culturally, and that's the core for myself, but it is good business. Bad safety will chew up your cash as well as your culture. We finished the first year without a single accident or incident, and that is really something we're very, very keen and proud of. And we think that'll underpin our growth going forward. These are the sorts of slides that you'd like to have year on year. It's just unfortunately not possible. I call this slide the Stairway to Heaven slide for obvious reasons. This gives you a sense of the last number of months and where we've been. You can see that we get started up at our 1 shift a day operation. We stabilized that. We moved to 2 shifts a day, made sure that was sustainable. You can see we've ramped up to the top right-hand corner of those slides to our full production. The plant itself is running at its rated production now of 270 tons an hour. Those of you that are very good on operational math, you'll realize if you factor that through a working year, that will greatly exceed our license right now. So our intention is not clearly to do that. But we've got an operating margin now that gives us some flexibility in case we have untoward weather events or if a plant breaks, etc. So we're operating at 270 tons an hour, which is our targeted rate. And we're, as you can see at the bottom slide, you can see our product. That is in and around where we will be now for the next little while until we do grow and expand the site. So that slide next year in 12 months will look a little bit higher to the right-hand side and be flattening off. But really, as it sits now for the first year, it's been a very, very positive and a very successful ramp up to our full production. We're getting some reflection in this, although our share price is not fully reflecting that, and we think that'll change in time. In the last 3 to 4 weeks, we've had some feedback. There's some more out today, in fact, some feedback just on what others think about us, and those multiples of those share prices on the top right for the commercial people in the group are multiples of where we're trading right now and where we expect to be in the next 6 to 8 months. And some of the headlines have been very positive. So we're getting some recognition in the international marketplace about the year in arrears and where we're heading. As I said before, it's very powerful and very positive to look at the year gone past, but that doesn't necessarily tell you what next year will look like. The things in front of us for SAFM that we're looking forward to, and this is the very immediate future, the next sort of 6 to 12 months, we've talked about the JORC resource report. It's not designed to grow the ore body at 150 million tons. We've clearly got excess resources to mine with, but it does allow us to openly market this within the Australian sphere and other spheres and get that parity of confidence. On site, we've taken this site and we've been very careful with cash flows, been very, very careful with profit and productivity. Those are all in very good stead right now. So we're taking some of the on-site infrastructure and upgrading that. That will allow us obviously more room for the guys to have dinner, better showers, a few offices. We're sort of doing it on the cheap and cheerful, if I would say that now. But it also allows us to put in on-site laboratories and a few other very fundamental bits of equipment that will allow us to become even more client-focused and even more margin-focused than we are now. One of the key things for us is in the next couple of months we hope to finalize our scope of work, or don't hope to, we plan to finalize our scope of work, and we will head into, with the board's support, we will head into a growth phase, an expansion phase at the Ponto Verdo site. We will be expanding the site. Now obviously the feasibility study will define exactly how large that expansion is, but based on the ore body and the asset as it sits now, that is planned or expected to be in the 6 to 10 million ton a year range. So that feasibility study should kick off in the next month and a month and a half, and we'll announce that property. Other future events for us really is the position we've left ourselves in now with a strong treasury and strong cash flow and good operating experience. And the team that I alluded to earlier, we're in a position to grow off-site as well or through mergers and acquisitions. And we've been looking at those for the last little while. And as I said earlier and as was well introduced this afternoon and this morning, Brazil's a great spot to be looking. So that's our first focal point. I think just to wrap up, and I won't read slides out to you line by line, but really to wrap up, South American Ferro Metals, or SAFM as we call it, has a year in operation, has a year since listing. We had a plan to get ourselves stabilized and ramp ourselves up to full production, and we've done that. We had a plan to bring our resource into a JORC standard, and we will do that by the end of this calendar year. We wanted to build our team such that we could ensure the success on Ponto Verde, but we could also ensure the success on whatever we went forward to do. And we think that team's in place now, and they're ready to go, and they started doing some of those assessments. Really, for us, we see Brazil as the right place to be. We see South America, the broader South America, as equally as opportunistic and positive. And really, we plan to be in that region and producing for a while to come, and hopefully back here talking to you about some more success next year. So once again, many thanks for taking the time to learn a bit about SAFM.